The Prime Minister's due to visit the Adass Synagogue in Melbourne in the next couple of hours. Let's go live there now. Naomi Levin joins us. She's the Chief Executive of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria. Naomi, thanks for your time. How's the community holding up right now?
It's a good question. They're doing quite well, although we're still, living under this cloud of, I suppose, fear because there are these three suspects who haven't been caught yet. And I think until we get some arrests, I think there's still that sort of anxiety around the community that the people who did this are still at large.
There's been some criticism of political leadership or lack of, particularly from the federal opposition to the government. Will the Prime Minister be a welcome visitor this afternoon when he gets to the synagogue?
Well, look, I always think it's important to respect the office of the Prime Minister, and I think the community here certainly will agree with that. So he will be welcomed. However, that doesn't mean that we've been satisfied with the response from all levels of government, to be honest. We've been warning as a community for over a year now that anti-Semitism continues to increase. This is our biggest nightmare. It sort of goes from terrible signs, vandalism, graffiti, slogans being shouted, Jewish people being attacked on the street, to this terrible incident, this terrible situation, and a terrorist attack is what we now know it is.
So, and also, do you think that a visit earlier from the Prime Minister was called for? Is that what you would argue as well?
Look, I've been down here a lot over the past few days, and I have been overwhelmed by support from political leaders. The timing of the Prime Minister, I suppose, is a matter for him. But what we have been calling for is just for government to be taking this seriously. We haven't been warning about this threat for nothing. It isn't something that brings us joy or helps us get to sleep at night. What we wanted was action much sooner than this. We didn't want to get to this point. We just want to live lives, like every other Australian does, safely, in our community buildings, in our places of worship. And we've been asking for that opportunity for a really long time from all levels of government. And unfortunately, this has shown that those calls just haven't been responded to appropriately.
And do you think that the problem with the use of hate symbols, flags supporting terror groups and so on, week in, week out at protests, that has been part of the slide towards this worsening scourge of anti-Semitism?
Look, certainly. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that we've seen a normalisation of hate speech against Jewish people. I've been working in the community on and off for probably nearly 20 years, it pains me to say, and we've never seen the level of rhetoric that we see today that is acceptable. You can walk down the street and say terrible things. You can hold signs up that say absolutely horrific, violent things against Jews without any fear of repercussion. You can wave the flags of terrorist organisations, hold up the signs of known terrorist leaders, and there doesn't seem to be a response from law enforcement and from government. And unfortunately, this is what happens when we just don't set that deterrent and we don't have that proper response.
Were you surprised that there are some warnings, travel warnings being issued to Jews internationally about the anti-Semitism in Australia, or does that fit with your own thinking where things are at right now?
Look, I'm not surprised because I've had so many calls from relatives and friends and other community leaders around the world, in New Zealand, in Europe, in North America, and they just can't believe what they're seeing here. Australia's always been seen as a safe place for Jews, and that's been shattered for us. That really has been shattered. Now, I would continue to urge our community to keep participating in Jewish life here. We have got strong support from police. We have our own sort of community organisations looking out for everybody who's, going into synagogues, Jewish schools, other Jewish institutions. But it doesn't come as a surprise that internationally this is the reputation that Melbourne now has, unfortunately.
When you look at the actions of recent days, and sadly a lot has been prompted by the events of what took place behind you there at the Adass Synagogue, but the Council of Australian Jewry asked for $32.5 million on Saturday. The Prime Minister announced that commitment to those funds on Sunday. The Federal Police have announced a task force combating anti-Semitism specifically. I know it's belated in your view, but are these moves starting to reassure you and other leaders of the community?
Look, they certainly are. I think, unfortunately, it's very reactive. What we've been calling for is a much more proactive response. We didn't want to have to see a tragedy like this, a crisis like this, that would push people and kick people into action. But we do welcome that joint task force. I think it will really shed some light on this problem. And that funding for security will really plug some gaps that we have. Jewish people at the moment, as well as paying membership, to a synagogue or Jewish school fees, we all pay hundreds or sometimes thousands of dollars extra in security levies. That's new. That's not something that's been part of our community forever. When I was growing up, I went to a Jewish school. I participated in life and continued to participate in life at a synagogue, and the doors were open. We didn't need the security, the CCTV, the bollards, the fences that we see now. That's all new. So any help that we receive is welcome on that front.
Yes, well, you're right. Australia should be, and hopefully will return to be, a safe place for Jews to live. This is your home, and we send you our support and solidarity at a very difficult time, Naomi, for the Jewish community in Victoria. All the best to you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.